Hello people! So let's check the rating scale. People have been asking about it and not a lot of people have the time or interest to go to the website and check all of this shit. So as you all know, you can check the ratings at theretrojob.com/Nico evaluates, and we got all of the games here in order from best to worst. Got a little arrow to take you back to the top, and also if you click the list view here, gives you a smaller list, easy for the eyes, and you can click a game such as Rocco-chan and brings you there. Have your summary, and you can click the title so it brings you to the actual playlist. So that's all fine and dandy, right? But what a lot of people ask me is, how are some games rated the way they are, and how does it actually work? Because I say a lot of shit about games that have 6 stars, and I say a lot of shit about games that have 7 stars. And games that I gave a lot of good feedback for, I rated 3 stars. And how does that work? If we go back to the top and you click this bar that says information, got a little explanation of what Nico Evaluates is, but then you have the rating graph. So this is essentially the rating graph. What you might notice is that we're not going straight from 0 to 10. It's not a straight line, it's not a diagonal line from one place to another. As you get higher and higher on the graph, it gets more difficult as you go through it. So in order for you to bump your game from 2 stars to 3 is a bigger hurdle than it would be to bump it from 1 to 2. I've done it this way because it gives a better understanding of the challenges that the developers might face during their journey. If this was just a straight line, then it wouldn't make as much sense in this context. Sure, it makes sense in the way that if you just use numbers 1 to 10, 5 is an average game, right? But here, I think this system works better for games. So when certain aspects and certain qualities are met, then at that point you bump your game up, depending on what the game does wrong and what it does right. So I always weigh the different aspects against each other and see where the game might land to have a baseline, and then I just move it about one direction or the other. So for example, if a game has robot masters that are forgettable, stages that are lacking, then I might start going down here. Because if a game is not memorable, then is it really worth playing? And so if we look at all of the different steps, we got Disgraceful at 0. It does nothing for the Mega Man community, and it makes a mockery of Mega Man at its core. That's basically Disgraceful. It has nothing to offer and you should not probably even play it. Unacceptable. Does some things right. And from 0 to 1 it's a straight line. So it's quite easy to bump your game from 0 to 1 by just adding a few things that might make it look like a Mega Man game. Just a tiny bit. There's something there that gives you the assumption that the developer actually tried. Then we got number 2, which is Terrible. Again, on the same diagonal line here, Terrible would fall in the same category as 0 and 1. So it's quite easy to notch the game between these numbers, depending on what aspects the game has and what's wrong with it. Basically, a terrible game is also a game that you should probably not even play. It does nothing right. But again, it's done slightly better than a game that's unacceptable. It's terrible, it's not unacceptable. That's the difference. Then to bump up your game from terrible to subpar to 3, that would take a massive hurdle. So at this point you need to have quite a bit of understanding how Mega Man works. But I think the core problem at number 3 is that it doesn't capture the essence of Mega Man. It's just a game. So it's missing something very critical and it doesn't do most things right. It's just kinda there. It's forgettable, it doesn't tickle you in any way, and after playing it you're like, what did I just play? I can't remember. But then again, there are some things here, there are some things to like. It did It did stuff right, and that's why the huge bump. There's a huge difference between something that's terrible and something that's subpar. There are a lot more good things about a game that's rated at 3 than a game that's rated at 2. This section here, from 0 to 2, is its own thing. If you got 3 stars, then you are out of the shit league, so to speak. You're out of there. You should be semi-proud of that accomplishment for going over this hurdle here. Again, if we move to 4, that's insufficient. That does more things right, believe it or not, than subpar. So maybe it has memorable robot masters, maybe the stage designs are wonderful, maybe there's something there that starts to resemble a Mega Man game, but at its core it's not something that I would necessarily recommend. So the same kind of deal kind of continues here with the line. It's easier to get from 4 to 5 than it is to get from 3 to 4. 5 is uninspired. It is uninspired, but it's not enough to consider it as a Mega Man game. And when I say that, I mean the aspects of the game are not built the way that you should expect from a Mega Man game. There's a lot of things there that should be fixed in order to make it a fluent experience. Uninspired is just that. It's not inspired enough to be a Mega Man game. It doesn't deserve the title necessarily. It is uninspired. After that though, huge fucking challenge. We're trying to get to acceptable. This is what I would consider the breaking point. If you get to 6, which is acceptable, I would consider that an accomplishment. If you get 6 stars, your game I would consider a true Mega Man game. It is acceptable in what it does, and you should probably... This is where you should probably try the game. I would encourage you to try the game when it gets 6 stars. Definitely everything above 6 is pretty much... I wouldn't say 6 is good, but it's there. You should probably check it out. I'm not saying it's a masterpiece or anything. It's acceptable as a Mega Man game. Mega Man is something that is... It's so tricky to get right, and it's so important to get right, because Mega Man is what defined platformer games in the 90s, and Mega Man is the thing that everyone goes after when they try to make their perfect game. So if you make a Mega Man fan game, you goddamn better be sure it lands in 6. It better be acceptable, right? So next, not as big of a hurdle from 5, but we got reputable. This is where good games might land. This is where a game would actually be worth your time. This is where I would start recommending stuff to you. Reputable is just that. It has earned its place right here. And as we go to 8, not a huge difference in the line, and if you look at the line here, the difference is not that vast. So now we get to the nitty-gritty stuff. We're not gonna find that much stuff to differentiate these other rankings from each other. We're getting to the perfection section here. I can't believe that rhymed. So after 7 we got admirable. The game did something right, completely right. It is a true Mega Man game at this point, just like 7, but it improved from reputable. This is a game that you would admire. This is a game that you take notes from for your own development progress. This is a game that you play for fun and you enjoy it every time. You admire the game. After 8, not a huge jump, satisfying. This is a game that is near perfection. It is as perfect as a game can get. So this is a game you'd play over and over again and just enjoy it. It does almost everything right. There's maybe a few flaws, but it's not enough to make you weep. This is the absolute perfection. If you get 9 stars, you've done it. You've reached the top. And a perfect 10 doesn't exist. It's still here just as a reference, but no game is ever gonna get 10 stars. That is impossible to get. You can't be perfect. There's always something. There's always something to critique. So that's the gist of the rating graph and how it works. I find this to be quite interesting. Of course, a lot of people are gonna say this sucks, you should just have a diagonal line from 0 to 10, so it's easy to understand. But I like this because it's easy. It's easy for me to see how to rate games. And I think it works pretty well. The more games that are gonna be on this list, the easier it is to see how the rating graph actually works. There's no game rated at 4 yet, and that's pretty interesting. Some people might argue that Dr. Wily's final attack should be higher. Maybe so, but it was such a forgettable game, I can't remember a single robot master from the game. And it did a lot of things wrong, but there was a lot of good. The enemy placements, for example, the positioning, the stages. That gives you 3 stars, but it's not enough to bump the game up. If you look at the graph, 3 stars is subpar. Maybe a bit harsh, but hey, it's me. I am fucking harsh. Have you seen the way I nitpick the games? Have you watched the series? I think Dr. Wily's final attack was the only game that people were like, I'm not sure about those stars. Everything else I don't think people have commented on. Maybe people expected Rocco-chan to be lower, but it's quite a good game though. I think it deserves, like if you look at the graph, every game that got 6 stars, we got 4 games here. They are all acceptable. You have to keep that in mind. 6 stars is acceptable. It's not amazing, it's not good, it's acceptable. If we get to 7 though, it's reputable. So, the average game in my graph would be 6 stars. And that's quite interesting if you think about that. So, 5 is uninspired, that would be Mega Pony. It's not enough. It's not good enough. So you have to keep the rating graph in mind when you give feedback on the actual star rating. Don't just blindly think that it's from 0 to 10. Because it's really not, it doesn't work that way. So something that is 7 stars. Let's look at the graph. What is 7? It's reputable. It's not admirable, it's not satisfying, it's not acceptable, it's reputable. 7 stars is above average. If we're close to 7.7, that's almost admirable, but not quite there. You have to look at the graph first and then look at the stars to understand how it works. Probably people who are into math and stuff are probably gonna criticize this graph, although I had feedback from one guy in Discord who said it's actually a pretty cool graph and he liked all the different stars. So that gives me hope that maybe it's not a crap system, and I quite like it myself. I like where the games land, and I just think it works pretty well. And people always ask me, am I gonna change the star rating later? I doubt it. There has to be some major event that makes me swap star ratings at a later time. We will see though, but for now I don't think that's gonna happen. So certainly quite the interesting graph. I just wanted to make this video because a lot of people probably don't even bother coming to the site and reading all of this crap. So now we got an understanding of how this works. It's quite fun to actually check the games here. I'll put the link in the description and the comments if you want to visit and check the ratings and read this information on your own. I explain here how this whole situation works and such. But that is the gist of it, how it works. Mega Man 7 is next. I should let you know that I won't be recording anything for the next couple of weeks, but I have pre-recorded the entire Mega Man 7 evaluation, and I'll be doing another one as well, so episodes will keep coming, but I am unable to comment on your comments on the actual videos. I'm just gonna respond to you in the comment section in the near future here, so bear with me on that. In any case, check the website and check yourself.